It's strange how quickly something that once felt like a dream can start to feel like a burden. When I first married Austin, I thought I had won the lottery of husbands. He was the kind of man other women secretly wished for. Attentive, playful, and utterly incapable of keeping his hands off me. Every morning he'd kiss me before I left for work, every evening he'd pull me close on the couch, and in between, he found 100 little ways to remind me I was his. My friends used to tease me about it. "Must be nice," Sarah would sigh when I bragged that Austin still looked at me like we had just started dating. And it was nice. For the first 3 years, I wore his affection like a badge of honor. I felt chosen, adored, envied. I told myself I would never take it for granted. My name is Kendra, and I'm 28 years old. 6 months ago, I would have told you I was living inside a perfect marriage. Today, I'm not so sure I'll have a marriage at all by the end of the year. Because somewhere between the busy deadlines at work, my mother's health problems, and the constant exhaustion of keeping everything afloat, Austin's love stopped feeling like love. At least, not the kind I needed. His touches, once thrilling, began to weigh on me. I couldn't hug him without feeling his body respond, couldn't kiss him without it deepening into something more. Even casual moments, like watching TV together, seemed to turn into a spark he couldn't hide. The irony is, Austin never pressured me, not once. If anything, he tried to be discreet, adjusting himself quietly, pretending nothing had happened. But I felt it, every time, and the more I noticed, the more it irritated me. I wanted comfort without desire, affection without expectation. Instead, I started to feel like my body was some kind of switch he couldn't stop flipping. I didn't tell him, of course. I expected him to just know. I convinced myself a good husband should be able to read the difference between when I wanted passion and when I just wanted peace. But Austin kept loving me the only way he knew how, openly, fully, physically. That's when resentment began to creep in. A quiet, poisonous resentment that I kept feeding with every sigh, every forced smile, every moment I pulled away instead of leaning in. And looking back, I can see exactly when the cracks began to spread. I just didn't realize how fragile everything was, or how quickly one careless moment could shatter the love I thought was unshakable. At first, I brushed it off as stress. Work was relentless, my phone buzzing with emails even at midnight, and my mom's declining health pulled at me from every direction. I was running on fumes, and sometimes even breathing felt like another task on my list. So when Austin slid behind me in the kitchen and wrapped his arms around my waist, I told myself the irritation I felt wasn't about him. It was about everything else. But slowly I started to notice a pattern. Every touch carried a charge. Every kiss seemed to ask for more. If I leaned against him while we watched TV, I could feel his body reacting within minutes. If I gave him a quick peck goodbye in the morning, he'd try to turn it into something deeper, lingering, passionate. It wasn't just affection anymore. It felt loaded. The truth is, Austin never once demanded anything of me. He never pushed, never made his arousal my responsibility. But I began to resent it anyway, as though his body's response was proof he couldn't separate love from desire. Was I not allowed to just exist in his arms without becoming the center of some unspoken need? My friends would still gush over how lucky I was. Lisa once laughed, saying her husband barely noticed her new haircut, while mine acted like a teenager in love. I smiled and played along, but inside I wanted to scream. They didn't understand how suffocating it felt to be constantly wanted. They didn't know what it was like to crave neutrality, just one embrace that wasn't followed by heat. I began to pull away in small, almost invisible ways, turning my cheek when he kissed me too long, pretending to be busy when he reached for me on the couch, hugging back less tightly than before. Little signals I thought he would notice, little boundaries I hoped he'd respect. But Austin didn't seem to see any of it. To him, nothing had changed. He was still the same affectionate husband, still offering me the very love that had once made me feel so lucky. Inside, though, I was boiling. Each ignored signal fed into my frustration. I told myself, He should know me better than this, that after years together he ought to sense when I needed space instead of passion. Instead of saying anything out loud, I let the silence between us do the talking, silence he couldn't hear. Looking back, I see how unfair that was. But at the time, it felt like he was failing me, and the pressure kept building. I was a storm, gathering strength in silence, and he was standing right in its path, without the faintest idea of how hard I was about to strike. It was a Tuesday that had been frayed at every edge. A client ambushed me in a meeting, my inbox bled red, and my mother called twice from the clinic sounding small and tired. By the time I got home, my head was ringing and my jaw hurt from clenching. All I wanted was to go quiet, curl on the couch, let a dumb show fill the room, and not be needed by anyone. Austin read my mood the way he always did. He cooked without asking what I wanted. He didn't interrogate my day, just slid the plate in front of me and listened to the bits I offered. After dinner, I sank into the couch. He came up behind me and set his hands on my shoulders, thumbs pressing into the hard knots at my neck. The first exhale came out of me like surrender. For a minute, I let myself melt. Then he kissed the side of my neck, soft, absent-minded, and one of his hands drifted along my arms. It should have been nothing. It used to be nothing. But I felt his body respond, the shift in his breathing, the quickness under his skin. Something snapped. I twisted around too fast. You always sexualize me, and it's disgusting. The words left my mouth like a slap I didn't know I was capable of. His hands fell away. He took one step back, face open with the kind of hurt you only see once you've caused it. For a beat, we both just stared, me breathing hard, him suddenly very still. I can't help that I'm attracted to my wife, he said quietly. I'm a young, healthy man, Kendra, that's normal. I should have let the truth of that land. Instead, I doubled down, riding the anger that felt like armor. I want a hug without you getting worked up. I want a kiss that doesn't turn into this. You can't touch me without making it about sex. He swallowed, eyes lowering like he was trying to carry my accusation without dropping it. I don't make it about sex. My body reacts. I've never asked you to do anything about it. I try to be discreet. Then, be more discreet. I shot back. Figure it out. There it was, the ugliest part of me, flung across the room and sticking to everything. He stood there for a long second that felt like an hour. I watched something shift in his face, not anger, not even defense, just a decision taking shape. Okay, he said finally. Not a challenge, not a plea. A boundary, drawn in soft pencil that would turn to ink the moment he walked away. He didn't touch me again. He turned off the living room light and went to bed early, leaving me on the couch with the TV murmuring at no one. The silence that followed wasn't triumphant. It was hollow and echoing, the kind that makes you suddenly aware of your own heartbeat. I told myself I'd been honest. I told myself he needed to hear it. But the relief I'd expected didn't come. Instead, I felt queasy, like I'd flung a door open and a winter storm had rushed in. In the morning, he was already dressed for work. No kiss, no lingering hug, just a gentle, almost formal, have a good day. The quiet felt deliberate. Respectful, even. And for the first time, I realized there are some things you can't unsay, because the person who heard them will spend the next day, and the one after, living exactly as if they're true. The shift was immediate. The man who once couldn't pass me in the kitchen without pulling me close now brushed by with a polite, "Excuse me?" The husband who used to smack my butt playfully while I cooked now simply reached for the salt, careful not to touch me at all. At first, I told myself this was what I wanted. No more constant heat, no more body that reacted every time I came near. For the first few days, the silence in his hands felt like space to breathe. I could hug him without feeling his pulse race. I could sit beside him on the couch without his arm tugging me closer. I thought I'd finally gotten through to him. But relief curdled into something I hadn't expected: emptiness. It hit me the night I leaned over to kiss him goodbye before work. He kissed back lightly, like you would a distant cousin, and then went back to tying his shoes. No smile. No attempt to hold me for longer. Just efficiency. It stung more than his desire ever had. By the end of the week, I realized Austin wasn't pulling away to punish me. He was adapting, respecting my words in the most literal way possible. If his attraction disgusted me, he would make sure I never had to see it again. We became polite roommates. He still asked about my day, still took out the trash, still made sure the car had gas. But the warmth was gone, stripped out of every gesture. He didn't look at me like a woman anymore, just a person sharing space. I tried to spark something, anything, wore the dress he used to love, brushed against him in the hallway, waiting for his hands to find me. Nothing. His eyes stayed steady, calm, detached. One night, I snapped. "So that's it? You're never going to touch me again?" He looked at me with a softness that felt more like pity than love. "You said it was disgusting, Kendra. I don't want to make you uncomfortable." Hearing my own word thrown back at me was like swallowing glass. I went to bed that night aching, not from being touched too much, but from not being touched at all. For the first time in our marriage, I felt invisible. And worse, I realized I was beginning to miss the very thing I'd once begged him to stop. When Austin came back from his business trip, something in him had shifted. He wasn't colder, he'd already mastered polite distance, but calmer, almost settled. The silence between us no longer felt like hesitation. It felt like resolution. We sat at the dinner table one night, clinking forks against plates, in that empty rhythm we'd grown used to. Then, without warning, he set his fork down and looked straight at me. "Kendra," he said softly, "I don't think we're sexually compatible anymore." For a moment, I just blinked, trying to process the words. "What are you talking about?" He leaned back, choosing each sentence carefully. "Since that night, you know what I mean, our intimacy has dropped to almost nothing. I've been thinking about it a lot. I can't live in a marriage where my desire for you is treated like something disgusting." Panic rose hot in my throat. "I didn't mean it like that. I just wanted you to tone it down, not shut off completely." "I can't tone it down," he said evenly. "I can't control how my body reacts to you. I can only control what I do with it. So I shut it off. But the truth is, that isn't sustainable. Not for me. And not for us." I opened my mouth to argue, but then he dropped the real bomb. "There was a woman on the trip," he said. "Nothing happened, but she flirted with me. And in one conversation, she made me feel more wanted than I've felt in months. That scared me, Kendra, because it reminded me how unhappy I've been." The room spun. "So you want to leave me for some stranger at a bar?" I spat, desperation sharpening my voice. "No," he said firmly. "I want to leave because I deserve to be with someone who doesn't recoil when I desire them. Someone who makes me feel appreciated instead of ashamed." I burst into tears, messy and loud, begging him to reconsider. But Austin just sat there, watching me with eyes that were already halfway gone. That night, he didn't crawl into bed beside me. He carried his pillow to the sofa in the living room, unfolding a throw blanket and leaving the quiet house between us. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just a phase or a bruise that would heal. It was the beginning of the end. I thought I had time. I thought if I apologized enough, cried enough, begged enough, he would remember who we were and fight for us. But Austin didn't fight. He didn't scream, didn't slam doors. He just left piece by piece until there was nothing left to hold on to. He started sleeping on the couch. 2 weeks later, he toured apartments. By the end of the month, he'd signed a short-term lease across town. One Saturday morning, he folded his t-shirts into a duffel, packed his books into 2 boxes, and set his spare key on the hook by the door. "I'll have my mail forwarded," he said, voice steady, as if we were discussing a utility bill. We chose a mediator instead of a courtroom. No grand speeches, just spreadsheets, bank accounts, the car, the boring math of a life unstitched. He took his desk, the dining chairs, half the cookware. I kept the bed and the house, for now. When the settlement was signed, the silence felt heavier than any verdict. "I've spent months trying to be the husband you wanted," he told me after one session, when I begged him to reconsider. "Someone who could touch you without wanting you, who could love you without desiring you. And do you know what I learned? That isn't love. That's pretending, and I can't live like that." While the paperwork crawled through its waiting period, he built a new routine: therapy on Thursdays, weekend hikes with friends I'd rolled my eyes at. He stopped posting photos of meals we ate together and started posting sunrises. I stalked it all like a punishment, watching him look lighter without me. The decree arrived by email, 2 pages that ended 3 years. I cried at my kitchen table over a PDF. Only after that did I hear about her, not the woman from the bar, a teacher he met through the therapy group. At first it was coffee after sessions, then a museum, then his hand on the small of her back, in a photo a mutual friend posted. According to people who'd seen them together, she adored him. I drove past the cafe where they liked to meet and saw them through the window. He was laughing, leaning into her touch the way he once leaned into mine. The sight hollowed me out. I tried one last time. I showed up at his apartment with a letter, tears bleeding the ink. "I can change," I whispered at the doorway. "I can be better." He shook his head. "You had 6 months to change while I was here, Kendra. Instead, you got angry that I wasn't chasing you anymore. I won't go back to being ashamed for desiring the woman I'm with." That was it. No screaming, no second chances. Just the soft click of a door I'll never open again. Now I sit in this half-empty house, scrolling through photos of him with her, reading captions like, "Can't believe this amazing man is mine." Captions I never bothered to write. And I finally understand. I didn't lose him because he stopped loving me. I lost him because I couldn't see his love for what it was, until it belonged to someone else.